Welcome. In this video, we're going to be exploring the prophet Amos, who comes from the kingdom of Judah, but traveled north to Israel to preach against their king, Jeroboam II, who reigned in about 750 BC. Under Jeroboam's rule, Israel had become wealthy and pagan. Therefore, Amos steps onto the scene, demanding Israel exclusively worship Yahweh and enact justice for the poor. A message that will echo through the centuries and inspire the likes of Martin Luther King Jr., who borrowed the words of Amos, declaring, "Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." The words of Amos were also crucial for the very first Christians. James, the brother of Jesus, will quote Amos at the Council of Jerusalem when it was decided that Gentiles would not need to keep the law. Most importantly, Amos deserves our attention because he is our very first literary prophet, meaning he's the first prophet whose preaching was compiled into a book. He thus sets the precedent for all Hebrew prophets. The writings of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, and all the prophets follow the standards set forth by Amos. For all of these reasons, Amos demands to be analyzed and explored. So if you're excited for this exploration before us, make sure you hit that like button, leave me a comment, and subscribe. But doing all these things really does make a huge difference to the channel. All right, let's begin. When Amos first traveled to Israel, he specifically went to the city of Bethel. And the reason why he went to Bethel is because when Israel started as a nation under the rule of Jeroboam I in about 930 BC, he created a pagan shrine at Bethel. There was a golden calf for Israel to worship and a new priesthood to rival the Levite priests in Jerusalem. In 1 Kings 12, we read Jeroboam I also made temples on high places and appointed priests from among all the people who were not of the Levites, end quote. And this pagan priesthood continued throughout the centuries, and at the time of Amos, there was a priest at Bethel called Amaziah. And Amos will confront this pagan priest, and as a result, Amaziah will send a complaint to Jeroboam II. We read all of this in Amos chapter 7, which is the only narrative portion of the entire book of Amos. We read, quote, "Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, sent a message to Jeroboam II, king of Israel. Amos is hatching a plot against you right here on your very doorstep. What he is saying is intolerable. He is saying that Jeroboam II will soon be killed, and the people of Israel will be sent away into exile." Then Amaziah sent orders to Amos, "Get out of here, you prophet. Go back to the land of Judah and earn your living by prophesying there. Don't bother us with your prophecies here in Bethel. This is the king's sanctuary and the national place of worship." End quote. Can we pause here a moment and notice that Amaziah tells Amos to earn his living by prophesying back in Judah? And this is because some prophets were paid. They worked in the king's court and thus earned a living. But this is not the case for Amos. He was not a professional prophet and thus famously responds to Amaziah with the following, quote, "But Amos replied, I am not a prophet nor the son of a prophet. I'm just a shepherd and I take care of sycamore trees." He continues, "But the Lord called me away from my flock and told me, go and prophesy to my people in Israel. This is what the Lord says, your wife will become a prostitute in this city and your sons and daughters will be killed. Your land will be divided up, and you yourself will die in a foreign land. And the people of Israel will certainly become captives in exile far from their homeland." End quote. Now, this threat of exile is so important in understanding Amos because it will happen. We know that Jeroboam II lived in about 750 BC. Well, in 722 BC, about 30 years later, Israel will be sent into exile. In 722 BC, Assyria will come and destroy the northern kingdom. All of its inhabitants will be led into exile, and Israel will cease to exist. Thus, the exile is the backdrop to the book of Amos. And according to Amos, this exile is the result of Israel's excessive wealth and paganism. Understanding these three elements, wealth, paganism, and exile, allows us to read and understand the entirety of Amos. So let's now read some portions together. We'll begin in Amos chapter 4, quote, "Listen to me, you fat cows living in Samaria, you women who oppress the poor and crush the needy, and who are always calling to your husbands, bring us another drink. The sovereign Lord has sworn this by his holiness. The time will come when you'll be led away with hooks in your noses. Every last one of you will be dragged away like a fish on a hook." We continue to read in Amos 3, "On the very day I punish Israel for its sins, I will destroy the pagan altars at Bethel. The horns of the altars will be cut off and fall to the ground. And I will destroy the beautiful homes of the wealthy, their winter mansions and their summer houses too, and their palaces filled with ivory." We read in Amos chapter 6, "How terrible for you who sprawl on ivory beds and lounge on your couches, eating the meat of tender lambs from the flock and of the choice calves fattened in the stall." You drink wine by the bowlful and perfume yourselves with fragrant lotions. Therefore, you'll be the first to be led away as captives. Suddenly, all your parties will end. Hopefully you can see that these three themes of wealth, paganism, and exile pervade all of Amos's writings. Another important thing in understanding the book of Amos is appreciating the way in which it has been arranged. The first two chapters are oracles against the nations surrounding Israel, like Damascus, Edom, and Gaza. Then for chapters 3 to 6, Amos condemns Israel itself. And then finally, in chapters 7 to 9, Amos will have 5 visions of judgment against Israel. And you've probably noticed the entire book of Amos is almost exclusively about judgment. But at the very end of the book, we do have a sliver of hope. And this portion of hope will be quoted by none other than James, the brother of Jesus. And he quotes it at the Council of Jerusalem in Acts 15, which we're now going to discuss. But before we do that, please make sure you hit that like button, leave me a comment, and subscribe. Doing all these things makes a huge difference to the channel. And if you really like my content and want to support my work, please consider becoming a patron. The goal of this channel is to create a library of videos that objectively and respectfully analyze the Bible. So if that's something you feel is important too, please consider becoming a patron today. All right, that's enough of begging. Let's now continue on by talking about the Council of Jerusalem in Acts 15. At the council, the apostles decide that the Gentiles do not need to keep the law. Peter and Paul both speak at the council, but it appears that James is the one running the show. And at the very end, James will quote Amos 9 verses 11 to 12 to justify his decision of allowing Gentiles to enter the church while not being under the law. So let's now read Amos 9 verses 11 to 12. It reads, quote, "On that day I will raise up the booth of David that is fallen and repair its breaches, and raise up its ruins, and rebuild it as in the days of old." Okay, let's forget about James for a moment. What did Amos mean when he wrote this? Well, he's obviously looking forward to the future Davidic Messiah who will restore Israel. And this future Messiah will return Israel to the past golden age when David was on the throne, a time in which there was not a divided kingdom, but a united monarchy. We continue to read in Amos, "In order that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the nations who are called by my name." So here we're told that in this future age, Israel will once again take possession of Edom, a country to the south of Israel, and all the nations called by God's name, which would be referring to the nations surrounding Israel. And this is yet again recalling the past reign of David, when all of these countries were under Israel's control. So Amos is looking back and hoping that one day Israel can return to this period of domination over these countries. In 2 Samuel 8, we're told that David conquers from Edom, Moab, the Ammonites, the Philistines, Amalek, and from the spoil of the king of Zobah, Hadaezer, son of Rehob. David won a name for himself. We continue to read. "So David reigned over all Israel and administered justice and equity to all his people," end quote. And this is what Amos truly wants for the Israel of his day. He's sick and tired of the exorbitant wealth and paganism that is rampant in his day, and is looking back to this golden age in which Israel had justice and equality for all. Okay, having now understood the context for Amos, let's now move nearly 800 years in the future, where James, the brother of Jesus, enters the scene. He reads the words of Amos 9 at the Council of Jerusalem, specifically that David's descendant will take possession of all nations who are called by God's name. And James sees this as referring to so much more than just Israel and the surrounding nations. He views the gospel as being meant for truly all the nations of the earth. And that is why at the Council of Jerusalem, they will fully accept Gentiles into the church. Now, I can already hear those skeptical people in the audience saying that James misquotes Amos 9. He's using the Septuagint, which mistranslates the Hebrew. And there is some truth to this claim. So in our next video, we're going to be breaking down this argument. Then after that video, we're going to explore the archaeology that proves Amos. And then we're going to talk about whether Amos 9 was actually original to Amos in the first place, which will involve talking about the book of Obadiah. And then finally, we're going to talk about the Bronze Age collapse, which is hinted at the book of Amos. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you're ready for all of these videos. And finally, if you made it this far into the video, please consider becoming a patron. If you're enjoying my content and want to support my work, this is the best way to do it. Patrons keep the lights on, so please consider becoming a patron today. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.